Professor. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to us and tell us about the Indo-French relations in space sciences. The floor is all yours, and then I'm all ears of the exciting things that you have to tell us.
Well, okay. First of all, again, thank you very much for this invitation. I appreciate a lot this opportunity. My time at CNES was from 1996 to 2003. So it's already, I left CNES 18 years ago. And I was chairman of ESA from 1999 to 2002. So it's already a long time. And I say that because a lot of stuff, a lot of interesting thing has been done after my tenure when I left. So in fact, much more has been done in terms of joint missions and agreements at top level, including the President of France and the Prime Minister of India. So in terms of concrete elements, it's much more than during my tenure. But my tenure time, what I can say is probably we prepared these successes, which came maybe after some time, but including the fact that I left. But probably during my tenure, there was a lot of preparations to obtain these results, successes later on. Why I'm saying that? Myself, I knew India, of course, because I'm a scientist. I visited the Tata Institute, University, Delhi, Indian Institute of Technology, and many other places as an academic. So I had a good knowledge of India, but I had no information whatsoever in space program, the Indian space program. So I was not specially prepared for a strong cooperation with India. And it turned out that it was very productive in terms of exchange. We had a lot of complementarity, a lot of common interest, and we built a very, very strong relations, friendship. I really enjoyed my contact with Dr. Kasturi Rangan, who was the president of ISRO, and he is now a personal friend. So after I left and he left also, we kept friendship contacts, any opportunities. So I invited him to the United States, also to Hong Kong, and he invited me to India a couple of times. And up to now, we still keep contact, which is a unique case. I had very good contacts with all administrators of space agencies, including NASA and in Europe, of course. But I must say really that my exchanges and contact and cooperation and friendship with Dr. Kasturi Rangan was at a higher level. So it is, and this probably is important to mention because from these common contacts and exchanges, ideas and discussions, probably what happened after I left and he left turned out to be extremely successful. I'm very impressed with all of the agreements and the cooperation with France and with the CNES and ISRO right now, which it seems to me that probably his role is, of course, if we exclude Europe, his role is certainly the most important agency, space agency, with which CNES is cooperating right now. I don't know, probably, maybe NASA is probably is very important also, but it's absolutely clear that his role is an extremely strong partner of CNES. And the reverse is, I think, also true. Okay, so what are the reasons of that good relations and common interest? And when I look at this time and I think about that, we are very complementary. India is a very big country. ISRO has a lot of people, much more than CNES, of course. So India is obviously much bigger than France, much bigger than Europe in terms of people. And but at the same time, the French have some background and in terms of launchers with Ariane and so on, in terms of satellites. So this expertise is useful and appreciated by Indian representatives. Also for us, India has, when I was discussing with ISRO and Dr. Kasurangan and his collaborators, we envisage really what are now all these new applications, which were very at the early stage of development at that time. So little was done. But now we see a lot of application in many areas. Of course, climate is very important, environment study, Earth observation, but also telemedicine, teleeducation, so communication access to areas where there is little in terms of technologies, obtaining internet or things like that. So India was obviously needed this type of new applications, but they were at very early stage, so there was very little. And this cooperation certainly was very useful to develop very concretely these applications. But in this time, we were thinking about them. We started a little bit. Megatropic, for instance, was considering during my time, but I think it was launched 2011, I guess, so much later. Much later, but it was designed, it was considered during this period. Okay, so ISRO also was quite interested in our experience in launches because India has also till today a very important ambition in developing launchers, but we had some important realization with Ariane in this domain, and also with how to commercialize launchers. Ariane was offering some expertise, which probably was unique because in the United States, the launchers are mainly supported by the government program, which is huge in the US compared to Europe, compared to all other countries. And so the application to ordinary non-government applications were very limited. Now, of course, it's changing because of people like Elon Musk, and so it has completely changed. But in those days, experience, the knowledge of CNES and ESA in terms of commercial use of launchers was certainly the first one, and ISRO was very interested in learning and exchanging with us. So ISRO was also an extremely good customer of Ariane, and there are many cases where Indian satellites were launched from Kourou, from Guyana, with Ariane, and that's what I want to say as an introduction. If I look at what has been done afterwards, and your progress is absolutely fantastic, remarkable. And it has been an excellent opportunity to have strategic cooperation right now, and up to the level that the President of France and the Prime Minister of India themselves supported this program of cooperation and encourage this strategic partnership. Probably it goes beyond space. I mean, France and India have probably a lot to do together. And we may see right now that, by the way, with the events which occurred recently, that India and France is very interested in having strong cooperation with India in all aspects, and regarding the Pacific, Indo-Pacific area. So it goes beyond, certainly it goes beyond the space, but space is certainly an extremely important part of this global cooperation and common interest, I would say, really common interest. Okay, so that's what I can say as a memory of this time. As I said, the concrete realization took place after I left. But to summarize, this time was useful. This time I'm talking about is 96 to 2003. This time has been very useful to prepare all the successes which occurred after my tenure. I emphasize the fact that CNES has an office in Bangalore with ISRO, so just to show how important CNES looks at ISRO as partnership in space. It was not the case at my time. I did not have that, but I'm very happy that it was done after I left, because it's obviously necessary in view of all what has happened in terms of so many projects. The ambitions of India is, of course, for us an opportunity, and it's very much appreciated. I can speak not only about myself, but all my successors and all what I know from from CNES activities right now. I believe the current president is going to, who has been appointed a couple of months ago, will seems to do his best in order that this cooperation remain extremely strong and even stronger.
Yep. Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir. I have a few questions to ask. If you were to pinpoint on, say, one idea or one event during your tenure as the president of CNES and the chairman of European Space Agency, what would be that? What was the highlight of your career in terms of what you were doing with India?
Well, again, I've been very impressed by the level, even in my time, which is already a long time ago. For me, ISRO has looked as an extremely professional agency. I did not see really much difference between the top agencies in the world, extremely professional with so many competent people and ambition. But, things have changed very fast. It's very important to realize that in those days, all what we are talking about right now was purely ideas, and but from the very beginning, ISRO and the Circus Urangan, they knew, they had a vision. They had a very strong vision, and that was impressive. That was impressive. So people extremely competent, extremely professional, visionary people, extremely good customers, Afarian, and business-oriented and application-oriented. Also, the use of space for everyone, for progress of mind. Of course, in India there are a lot of needed things. The country is so big, so huge. Population has so many needs in terms, and there are many places where India was thinking of space as a way to overcome all the difficulties and to go very fast to progress for the needs of people. It looks now very natural, but in those days, space was not like that. In those days, space was more a matter of prestige and matter of big powers. So it was not so clear that for developing countries, we had so many who had so many needs. Space was a way to proceed. It was not so clear because the needs are so numerous. Why to go to space? Because people think going to space is sending astronauts and so on, and is that very useful for the needs of population? Now it's clear it is very, very, very useful, and there's no doubt about that. But not in those days, it was not so clear. But India was always from the very beginning thinking of space in terms of applications of space, not just prestigious thing. So it's not a matter of, not a military issue. It was really the way to overcome difficulties of a so big developing country with so many people and with so many needs. So it was a hope of this technology, was the way to progress. That was very impressive. And it's not, even in Europe, in those days, people were saying, why do we spend all this money in space? Even in Europe. And in the US, it was, of course, as we know, it was a competition of the Soviet Union, and it was a matter of prestige. And it was not so much thought as the way to make the population better and improve. Now, of course, with internet, all these things, it's obvious. Now it's obvious, but it was not. It was not. But India was visionary in that more than other countries. Again, I was very, very amazed and impressed by this approach. So why is that so? The origin of that, it's not clear to me. Certainly, of course, India has always been interested in technology. The prestigious research institutes were from the very beginning as a way for development, but the needs and the need of the population are so numerous that anyway, so space was really considered as a way to achieve big progress for the country. So that's what I want to say clearly, and also in cooperation. So India was looking at partners, and they were interested in France, and this is something that I have appreciated, and I keep an excellent memory. In other words, always very open, and very reliable partner, very reliable, very open and cooperative, and this is nice. That's the impression that I keep. So it's not, it's more than to point out a very specific event. I did not have a situation where the president of France under my tenure went to India. No, not after I left. So I cannot tell you that day I was very honored to be with a French president, and we signed a big agreement, blah, blah, and so on. That did not occur, but I think what I'm saying is maybe more important, because that's probably this time was preparing this type of successes, and also contact at top level. So I think I have the impression that it was a helpful time to design and to prepare future success. In space, it takes time. It's not something which is done.
Overnight, and then you launch it up.
Yes, it's not so easy. It takes time because, of course, there are also budget issues, and so one needs really a goodwill, a strong will, and understanding of the complementarities, and so it was this type of thinking, which was certainly extremely helpful for successes which occurred later on. Okay, that's my feeling.
Yeah.
That's my impression. It has been a useful time. And personally, I enjoyed it very much. I enjoyed it very much. I have a lot of respect for India. I'm in the United States. I have a lot of Indian colleagues. In fact, the guy, the professor who brought me to the US, Dallas, is in India. It's an
Wow.
Indian friend. He's an Indian friend. So it's thanks to him that I could go to where I am now. So you
Wow.
see, I meet a lot of Indians in the US. It's a very powerful, very important community in the US. They put me in some as a partner in some NGO organization in India, which is very impressive in terms of education and the use of technology and so on. So, okay. So a lot of respect for your country. And when I was in the space area and domain, it was particularly nice and pleasant.
I think I just have one more question to ask. I mean, it's a part question. One, I wanted to understand there's a very unique relationship that Indian Space Research Organization and the French Space Agency share. Do you think there's some kind of an ideological similarity between the two space organizations? And having said that, if there's an ideological similarity, do you think that this kind of ideological buildup of a space organization is because of the kind of people they were and how they thought? It's not of a more of a company mandate, but of how it was envisioned when it was founded.
I think it's, again, I mentioned what we see right now. I can read on the media that after what the problem that France had in with this big contract with Australia, which was ended, closed, and in exchange, a cooperation between Australia, United States, and UK. France was very frustrated, and what I read in the newspaper is that now the French try to discuss with India. So, in other words, there is a natural, it seems that there is a natural complementarity. First of all, probably to avoid to be too much under the US on the one hand, or China, Russia, and okay, so there is this idea of what are the alternatives? What is the alternative? So, and India and France want to remain more or less independent as much as possible. It's not totally possible, of course. And at the same time, being together and will help. We have some kind of similar will of independence. And so it seems to me natural that finally we discuss together. Probably ESA is a strong partner, certainly, but maybe it's not as easy to discuss because ESA is also to some extent an international organization. So there are many. It's not just. It's not one country. Okay, so it's. There's certainly a lot of possibilities between Europe and India, but it's probably easier to discuss with CNES, I suppose. I can imagine it's easier. So there is a, okay, so there is, that's the conditions. which seem to me extremely favorable. The second thing is, this being said, there are so many applications now
Mm.
that there are a lot which can be done together without and then this is discussion. So what can be done? So otherwise, if you compare it with NASA, then probably you have to fit with NASA big programs, right?
Mm.
If you compare it to China, I suppose it's the same. So between France and India, we have many possibilities, and we can talk about that. We have many possibilities. We can talk about that without big political background or element. So, okay, so for us, certainly the applications which can be done in India, because there's so many of them, are very, very interesting, very useful, and they will help in France and Europe, because teleeducation, telemedicine, and things like that, we need that also. But India probably needs even more. And India will go fast, and it's very useful to be connected. So that's the second reason. Personal relation, of course, in my case, played a big role, but I'm not sure it is. It may have been a coincidence. It may have been a coincidence. I cannot guarantee that. Turned out that it was very, very good, very nice, and but it seems that also I think they are probably now. I don't know what the situation. You may know more, but there are a lot of startups in India, and personally, I was very interested in pushing startups in space. In my time, there was nothing. Not even in the US, by the way. There was nothing, and I was coming from computer information technology, and I was very interested in that, and I was very, very disappointed that in space there was nothing. And now there is completely changed. There is a lot. And there is a lot, and India there's a lot of them, and in Europe, of course, we are quite interested in that, but in particular in France. So this is certainly an opportunity. I mentioned that because it means you don't need to be Boeing or Airbus or whatever. So it's easier at this level to have good ideas, interesting ideas, and to cooperate. I don't know. I don't have a clear vision of the situation. I don't know if there is a lot of cooperation in terms of startup, but I would certainly think that's certainly an opportunity to push a lot, and to do together. I know also it's not so easy for a startup to succeed if you are not in the US, if you are not in China. It's not trivial. And cooperating between Europe and France in particular and India makes a lot of sense. Also, the quality of scientists, Indian scientists has been great. Therefore, top expert and scientists designing scientific application and scientific missions and so on and so forth. So I see a lot of positive. I don't see any aspects. I don't see any big obstacles. So it looks to me quite natural. And the fact that it flourishes does not surprise me. It's good and it's logical, I would say. So that's in terms of the reason of successful cooperation, passive cooperation. I would think. I don't see, if I look, we cannot have the same cooperation with China. Before becoming president of CNES, I was an academic, but I was president of INRIA. And INRIA is a National Research Institute for Information Technology and Control. So I come from information technology, not from space. The only thing I knew about space was the fact that control theory, sending a payload in an orbit with a launcher is a good exercise on optimal control theory. So how do you send, so it's a mathematical problem, an excellent example of optimal control. You want to send a payload in some orbit and you want to minimize energy and so on. So how do you control the trajectory? And so there is a model, mathematical model, and it's well known that it's a perfect application. In fact, control theory, which is my field of research, modern control theory, started because of space.
Yes.
Because of space.
So you got the right opportunity to test the theory in practice.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It started because of space and the competition between the Americans and Russians and the Soviet. Part of it was mathematical also. In other words, the development of control theory very much motivated by space application. Space application was the first application of control theory. Now it's no more the case because for the following reason, space is a very conservative domain. So when you have a good method, you don't change. There is no reason to change.
You're like, this is working, you won't change it anymore.
That's the only change that I've seen during my time was in relation with control techniques and methodology, is going from optimal control to what is called LQG, which means linear quadratic Gaussian model, to what is called robust control. Robust control was introduced and applied in space. But my big surprise, of course, that's what I knew about space, not much. Mostly in terms of technology, I did not know anything about the technologies or to build rockets or to build satellites, but to control the trajectory of the rocket, I had some idea. And I was very interested to see, visited, of course, I discussed with the launcher directorate in CNES, and I was very happy to see that they were applying the theory, like in the books. Like in the books, so it was not. So it was quite relevant. The theory was applied, was used, and that's it. And that I was very happy to see that. Now, it does not mean it's the reason I was appointed president of CNES, because. So, but it was a time when there was a lot of although it was very early, it was still a time where people were thinking that information technology and space have a lot to do together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot to do together. It was relatively and the government, the French government wanted somebody, they did not want someone, they wanted, to some extent, somebody who was not from space, who could come with new ideas. New ideas, and the most natural thing to connect was information technology. You have to remember that it was a time when there was something was successful, and some was less successful. But it was a time when they were thinking of constellation for internet. In particular, there was an Iridium program which started with Motorola, and the project which never started, the Bill Gates, Teledesic. Teledesic wanted, it was a constellation of, I think, 800 satellites, maybe compared to what is done now with Elon Musk seems little. But, but in my days, it was a big project. It could not be done because in those days, although there was this idea, at the beginning it was not very successful because the big satellite, telecom were big satellites, and they were not, there was not so much the reason of having constellation. So geostationary satellites became, and then it was, and now it comes back again.
Yeah.
But the idea was that's the reason why I was appointed. They wanted someone not necessarily with a space culture. It's very specific.
Somebody who understood technology better and could adapt space to modern technology.
No. But you mean technology or space? No, no, it was not my case. I did not know much about technology or space except control theory. But no, someone who, first of all, had a different culture. And second, among the things which were promising is the connection with information technology because of these big ideas like Teledesic or Iridium and so on. So it's some kind of, so to some extent they were thinking, although it was at the beginning, at that time, it was kind of failure. It took more time to do it. But still, there was this idea that telecom, because of internet and so on, should benefit from space, should use space. It was not at all connected in my days, very little. So, and this idea, which was a good idea, was not successful, very much successful under my time. And now it's very successful, and now it's very important. Happy to see that. But so to some extent, it was a pioneering time. That's why they appointed me. And the new president, by the way, has the same background as me. And when I was not the first one because my predecessor Lyons was also the same. So I was not, I was not the first one, but he was someone very much involved very much appreciated as a personality. But it was globally this idea that someone with my experience from information technology could be helpful in trying to connect space with telecom and information technology. The idea was very good. It was not immediately successful, some failure. And now it's, of course, it's obvious that it was a good idea.
Yeah.
So that's because I was not in the space. I was very happy to be at INRIA. I did not look at becoming president of CNES. So that's the reason. That's the reason. And the culture of space is also extremely specific.
Yes.
Very specific. It has changed considerably. This idea that now the private sector as a lead did not exist at all.
Mm.
And it was the same with NASA. And that's the reason why there was no startup. Because the idea, the paradigm was the following: the same in Europe, the same in
The space was
NASA.
always state sanctioned, and it was supposed to fulfill the state's agenda. It was never for the private industry.
No, well, let's be put that way. There are good reasons. So it worked in this way. So the agency, the space agency like NASA or ESA or in Roscosmos in Russia or ISRO and China, they were in charge of the design. Design of a launcher, design of a satellite, and the industry were just implementing the design. So the design was done by the space agency, and the role of industry was not to do that, was to just to realize the product, to make the product according to the design made by the agency. Why? What is the reason of that? The reason of that is safety. So the idea was that because the risk is so big in the space mission, not only for people, but also for the realization of the mission, we cannot just rely on private companies because they have their own constraints of profit and so on. So because of risk, responsibility, and so on, government has to be involved, and government means the agency, because the government has no technical knowledge. So the idea was that the space agency is strong, a lot of technical competent people there. We give them, like, of course, going to the moon with the Apollo program and so on. It's not a private program, right? It was not done by a company. So the company, like Airbus, or it was called differently in my time, Aerospatiale, or Dassault, and in the US, Boeing, they just implement the design designed by NASA, by ESA, by the engineers, okay? And the paradigm changed completely with a guy like Elon Musk. He has totally changed the thing because when the US was in a very embarrassing situation, was in the time of Obama, President Obama, when it was very embarrassing because the US could not send American astronauts in space anymore because the shuttle was stopped, and the US had no vehicle, and they had to use Soyuz to pay fare, like to take a taxi It's extremely embarrassing for Americans, extremely embarrassing.
Mm.
Can you imagine these guys they were in the situation where to go to send astronauts in space, they had no vehicles. they had to go to Russia. That's extremely embarrassing. And Elon Musk came and said, okay, I take the responsibility. So I take the responsibility. I guarantee it will cost half of what could be, but I want to do everything myself. So NASA does not interfere in the design anymore. It's a complete change of culture.
That is
tremendous change of culture. It's not at all the culture of space agency at all. And in other words, now the government buys a service. Does not design the vehicle, they buy a service to a provider. That requires, of course, a lot of trust in the company, in the provider, and, but nevertheless, they accept it. And the bet was successful. I cannot deny that. And by changing completely the paradigm from building a product to buying a service, it changed completely the space, but the culture was so opposed to this type of idea. It is not a matter of country, it's a matter of topic, space. So it was the same with CNES, the same with ESA, the same with NASA. No difference. And now, of course, probably India needs to have some guy like Bill Gates. We all need people like but also it has to enter into also the culture of the big providers like Boeing or Airbus in Europe, and because they can do that also.
Yeah.
So this change. So the issue of culture in space is extremely to change. It's not easy because they are very conservative. The reason is not a matter of power. The reason is the sense of responsibility.
Yes.
Sense of responsibility in terms of risk and so on.
And then the security.
Yeah, I want also, among the things that I learn a lot in space, and which is impressive, and I don't think it exists elsewhere. And it's true, and of course, ISRO can do that very well. So the scientists, the scientific missions. The scientific mission is very, very specific because the scientists, the scientific team has to work like industry because it's not just a project or a research development. They have to build something which will work.
Yes.
Which may have no market. So, but it must work. It must be operational.
Yeah, it's just totally against the principles of bureaucracy.
Well, anyway, so if you put a payload in space, it has to work, and it is not done by industry. It's done by the scientists because it's only one payload. There is no market, or practically no market, so no industry will be interested. So the scientist has to do everything. So these scientists who have a scientific objective. They design a scientific mission, a scientific payload, like an operational product made by industry. It has to be perfect, a lot of quality, a lot of, you cannot put something. So it has to work. It's very rare. I don't see anything like that because usually the academic people, they do in physics, chemistry, whatever, they do research, they do some kind of development, early development, but they never realize by themselves a product which has to work, to be operational.
Yeah.
So it does not exist. There is only in space, to my knowledge, you will find academic people or scientists, not in industry, not in industry, able to realize an operational product like industry. And why it's not done by industry? Because there is no market.
Yes.
It's only one shot, or that's it. It's one case, so there's no market for that. So industry will not do it. And they do it. And of course, in India, I'm sure a lot of people are doing that. But that exists only on space. It's very impressive. Very impressive. And I did not know that. I realized that when I was in my position. And of course, cooperation is very important in science, cooperation. So you have international teams. That's very, very favorable. And it's an interesting thing, which is very specific to space.